Hi, boys and girls. In this video, I'm going to be doing today's math lesson with you. Now, if you remember yesterday in math, we started talking about telling time. And I showed you how to tell time to the hour, both on a digital and an analog clock. If you remember, the digital clock looked like this, and it had the numbers. And then the analog clock was the one like we see on the wall at school, where we see the hands that go around and around. Now, just to do a little bit of a brief review to make sure it's still in your brain, I explained to you that the blue hand, which is not always blue, but on our clocks in class it will be, the long hand is the minute hand. And the reason why it's the long hand is because it has really long legs and it can run really fast. So it moves quickly around the clock. So that long hand counts the minutes. Okay? Then I told you that shorthand is the hour hand. And the hour hand is very short because it takes a long time with its short little legs to run around that clock. So when we're telling time, we know that the shorthand is pointing to the hour and the long hand is pointing to the minute. Okay? So as we go through this chapter, keep in mind that the long hand is the minute hand and the shorthand is the hour hand. All right, so if you open up your math book to today's lesson, we are going to continue working on telling time, only now instead of just looking at time to the hour, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we're going to start talking about time to the half hour, which when we're talking about half past the hour, we call it 30. So 1:30, 2:30, 3:30. And I'm going to help explain to you not only how to tell when it's 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, and so on, but also why we say 30 when it's half past the hour. All right? So if you want to open up your math book to today's pages, today's lesson begins on page 567. 567. Okay? And at the top here, it says half hour. Cole's school ends at the time shown on the clock. So here's the clock. To find the time, look at the hands on the clock. Boys and girls, there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So to go from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, 60 minutes have to go by. Then from 1 o'clock around to 2 o'clock, 60 more minutes go by. And every hour that goes by is 60 minutes. So it makes sense then that in half of an hour, we would take half of 60. And you know about fractions because we talked about halves and fourths just a few chapters ago. So if we take 60 and we break it into two equal pieces, because remember, in order to be half, it has to be equal, we would break it into 30 plus 30. So 30 is 1/2 of 60. So when it is 1/2 past the hour, we say 30. And that makes a lot of sense because when we're 30 minutes past the hour, we're halfway around the clock. Okay? So now, looking at our clock here, we can see that our hour hand, that short-legged friend who walks really slow because he has short little legs, it is between the 3 and the 4. You see that? It's not directly on the 3, but it hasn't made it to the 4 yet. So we're still what we say to be in the 3 o'clock hour. Looking over here at my bigger clock, anytime this hour hand, the red hand, anytime that it is from the 3 all the way until it gets to the 4, that is the 3 o'clock hour. So as the minute hand moves around the clock, you can see that that hour hand slowly moves so that when it lands on the 4, bing, we are at 4 o'clock. And you can see again, as this minute hand moves around, slowly that hour hand moves until it gets to the next hour. So when our hour hand is like you see it here, where it's just past the 3, but it hasn't made it to the 4 yet, we know we're in the 3 o'clock hour. So we know that our hour is 3, okay? So our hour is 3. Now our minute hand is pointing straight down on top of the 6. So we're not pointing straight up to the 12 where we say o'clock. Now our minute hand is down here over the 6. And if you look at the blue numbers on my clock, you can see that the blue number here says 30. Remember, halfway around the clock is 30 minutes. Now, I wonder if you knew this fun fact. Every big number that you see on the clock represents 5 minutes around the clock. So you can count by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 as you move around the clock to tell you how many minutes past the hour you are. So right now, looking at this clock, my hour hand is in the 3 o'clock hour, and it's pointing to the 30 minutes. So this clock says 3:30. And if I were to write that on my digital clock, my hour is 3, and my minutes are 30. So 3:30 on my digital clock and 3:30 on my analog clock. Okay? So now we know that Cole's school day ends at 3:30. We can either say 3:30, 3:30, or 30 minutes after 3. All of those mean the same thing. So let's go down now to the practice problems and let's take a look at number 1. Looking at number 1, I can see that my hour hand is pointing here between the 1 and the 2. In fact, it's about halfway between the 1 and the 2. But it hasn't gotten to the 2 yet. So I know that I'm in the 1 o'clock hour. So on my digital clock, I would write 1. And on my analog clock, my hour hand would be between the 1 and the 2 because I'm in the 1 o'clock hour. Now my minute hand is pointing straight down over the 6. And we know from our analog clock that when we're straight down over the 6, we're pointing to half past the hour or 30 minutes past. So it is 1:30 on that clock. It is 1:30 on this clock. And it is 1:30 on the clock in your book. So you can put a 1 there next to the word 30. That clock says 1:30. Our digital clock is a little bit easier to read. That one says 11:30. So it is 30 minutes after 11. So you can put 30 here for 30 minutes. And it is 30 minutes after the 11 o'clock hour. So 30 minutes after 11 is 11:30. Now let's take a look at the last clock here. I can see that I am between the 4 and the 5. So it's not 5 o'clock yet. I'm still in the 4 o'clock hour. My minute hand is over the 6, which puts me at 30. So this clock says 4:30 or 4:30. So go ahead and put a 4 on the line. Awesome job. Let's go on now to the next page. Okay, let me see. This one says, trace the hands on the clock and write the time in 2 ways. So you can see they have the hour here is the 8 o'clock hour and the minute hand is pointing to 30. So they've shown you it is 8:30 and on the digital clock 8 with the colon and then 30. Go ahead now for 5 and 6. You can see that number 5, the hour hand is between the 5 and the 6. It's not to the 6 yet, so it is the 5 o'clock hour, and it is 5:30. So here it says 5:30. You can put 5, and then on the digital clock, you can write 5:30. Now let's take a look at number 6. You can see that our hour hand is between the 2 and the 3, so we're in the 2 o'clock hour. And our minute hand is pointing down over the 6, which tells us it is 2:30. So on the line, you can put 2, and it will say 2:30. And then here you can write 2, and then after the colon, 30. All right, let's go down now to number 7. It says, Mr. Nico goes to the gym at 4:30. What are 2 other ways to write that time? Well, we could say 4:30. We could say 6:30, or we could say 30 minutes after 4. So go ahead and fill those in. Number 8 is the write about it question. We'll just talk about it. It says, are the hour and minute hands both on the same number at 6:30? Well, not exactly, because our hour hand at 6:30 will be between the 6 and the 7. Remember? Because as that minute hand moves around the clock, our hour hand slowly moves too. All right, moving on to the next page. This is another review of how to tell time to the half hour. I want you to go ahead right now and see if you can fill in 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and pause, and when you unpause, I'll go over the answers quickly. All right, for number 1, they've done it for you. It is 6:30. For number 2, you should have 30 minutes after 7. And for number 3, you should have 9:30. Going on now to the top of the next page. Go ahead and do 1, 2, and 3. Pause the video, and then when you unpause, I'll go over the answers quickly. All right, for number 1, you should have 10:30 and then 10:30. For number 2, you should have 1:30 and then 1:30. And for number 3, you should have 5:30 and then 5:30. Nice job. Looking at number 4, it says Delia stops playing at 4 o'clock. Aaron stops playing 30 minutes later. So what time does Aaron stop playing? Well, if Delia stops at 4 o'clock, the clock would look like this. If Aaron stops 30 minutes later, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, then this is what the clock would look like when Aaron stops. And this clock says 4:30. So we can write here 4:30. And the very last one there says, are the hour and minute hands on the same number when it is 6:30? We just did this one, and we said no, because at 6:30, the minute hand is right over the 6, but the hour hand will be between the 6 and the 7. Halfway between, because it's 6:30. Okay? So boys and girls, that is your lesson today on telling time to the half hour. So now you know that when you see a 30 on the clock, you are half past the hour. And you know that when your minute hand points down over the 6, you're half past the hour or at the 30-minute mark. I hope that you have learned something today, and I hope you practice telling time. I'm sure if you look at your microwave or your stove, it probably has a digital clock like this, but maybe somewhere hanging up in your house you have an analog clock. So you should practice telling time on both. Okay? I'll see you again soon. Bye.